Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end. As always, I give all the praise, honor, glory, and thanksgiving to God for that. Hope everybody is doing well. Back in my studio, good to be home for just a little bit. I leave Friday for Alabama. I have a couple of speaking dates there at a church, men's group, love to do that. And then on Sunday, I head off to Monaco for a week. I'm doing a big business conference there. So keeping busy, as always. But thank you again for all your support everywhere I go. It's wonderful to see all the people and the followers, and it's very rewarding. So thank you very much. I have to mention this. I've been getting numerous requests from people that want to text me, that want to talk to me. As you can understand, it's very, very tough over all the platforms, all the requests that I get. So I'm going to suggest that you go to Maniac, MINNECT.com. That's Maniac.com. Patrick Bet-David put that platform together. It's terrific. You can text me. You can have a conversation with me. We can do a video call. It's great. We schedule them. Excuse me. We schedule them, we line everything up, and it's a great way to be in contact with me. So, Maniac.com. While, excuse me, obviously the Trump verdict is in. We all know that he was found guilty on 34 counts. I'm not going to get into that in this video. I did touch upon it a little bit. Obviously, I'm very, very, very upset about it. What could I say, people, that hasn't been said already, or that I haven't said already? That was a kangaroo court. It's a travesty of justice, just horrible, the whole situation. I'll have more to say about it on this platform and on Rumble a little bit later on. I have some great guests coming up. I'm not going to mention who they are, but we're going to get into this pretty deeply. But it's terrible. It's not good for our country at all. I can tell you this, when I was in the UK, people were saying, what's going on with America? It's embarrassing. They're embarrassed to look at Joe Biden. It's terrible what's going on. But we're going to fix it. We've got to be optimistic about this. We have a big election coming up on November 5th, and we're going to fix this mess. And I really do believe that, we have to. That's it. We don't have a choice. Today, or I should say, while I was away, I had the pleasure and the privilege, I would say, of having a sit down with Tulsi Gabbard. I did it while I was in the UK. And what a great woman she is, people. I got to tell you this, she's a real patriot. I want to read a few things about her for those of you that don't know. You might have seen her. She's done a lot of political commentary lately, expressing her views. The great thing about her, she was once a Democrat. She's now an independent because she sees what's going on in the Democratic Party. It's not even really the Democratic Party anymore. It's the Progressive Party. They've taken it over. Trust me, people, the Democratic Party during my time growing up was a lot different than it is today. They were more middle of the road. They didn't have these crazy progressive values and views that they have. They didn't try to impose it on everybody like they're doing now. Tulsi Gabbard, to her great credit, realized this and has moved away from that party. She's now an independent, and she's speaking out about it. She got a great book out now called For Love of Country, Why She Left the Democratic Party, and what her values are now, what they've always been. It's not her that's changed. It's the party that's changed. Same thing Bill Maher says. I've been the same guy all along. It's not me that's changed. It's my party that's been hijacked by the progressives at this point in time. I want to read some things about Tulsi because I had really a great interview with her. I could have spoken to her for hours, but I want you to see the accomplishments of this woman. For those of you that are really not familiar with her, I want you to understand who we're talking about today. So let me read a couple of things. Tulsi Gabbard is an American politician, United States Army Reserve officer, and political commentator who was the U.S. representative for Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District from 2013 to 2021. Gabbard was the first Samoan American to become a voting member of Congress. Big accomplishment. She was a candidate for the Democratic nomination in the 2020 United States presidential election, and before announcing in October 2022 that she had left the Democratic Party to become an independent. That's kind of her background, but listen to this. In 2002, Gabbard was elected to the Hawaii House of Representatives at the age of 21. Gabbard served in a field medical unit of the Hawaii Army National Guard while deployed to Iraq from 2004 to 2005. She served in Iraq and was stationed in Kuwait from 2018 to 2009 as an Army military police platoon leader. While a member of Congress, she served as a vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, from 2013 to 2016, and resigned to endorse Bernie Sanders' campaign for the 2016 Democratic presidential nomination. Now, for those of you that are, staunch conservatives, don't get down on her because she supported Bernie Sanders at the time. Listen, she has her ideology. At that time, she thought that way. But she's come to see the light with the Democratic Party. She understands that they are destructive. They're not a good force in America anymore. And she had the courage, I would say, to leave that party, become an independent. And now she speaks her piece, and she's terrific. And I got to tell you, I think she is under consideration by Trump to be his vice president. I think she would be a terrific pick. If you want a woman as president, then she should be definitely considered, because I think she's presidential material, certainly vice presidential material. And if you want to groom a woman to take that position, I think Tulsi Gabbard certainly qualifies in every respect. Could you imagine Tulsi Gabbard debating Kamala Harris? It would be a slaughter, an absolute slaughter. I think Trump should really consider that. Of course, Trump has a lot of great picks in mind. He's got Vivek, who we spoke about, and a lot of other people that are just great. Any one of them obviously slaughter Kamala Harris in any kind of debate, and obviously are 100 times more qualified than she would be as vice president. But without getting any further, let me go back and show you the interview I had with her. Like I said, I did it while I was in the United Kingdom, and I just wanted to make this introduction to her now to treat her fairly, because she deserves all the recognition that we can give her. It's great to see, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, but it's just great to see an independent woman who's accomplished so much and has reached such a high level. I love seeing that. Contrary to what the UK says about me, that I'm a misogynist because I interviewed Andrew and Tristan Tate. So ridiculous. But anyway, without any further hesitation, here's my guest. Proud to introduce her, Tulsi Gabbard. Okay, Tulsi, I have to say something. I've been very excited to speak to you. I have watched you now for months and months and months, and I have to say this before we start. Really, awesome accomplishments that you've had throughout your career. It's really amazing to see what you've accomplished. And I'm a strong supporter of yours. And I have to say this right off the bat. I believe you might be being considered for vice president. Is that true?
That's the word on the street.
Okay, well, that's a good word. And I really hope it happens.
I
And
appreciate that.
I mean that. And I'd love to see you, make the next step if Trump is kind enough to do that, and see you as president one day, because I think you'd be terrific. Really.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. We as you know, our country is at a moment of great crisis on so many levels. Yes, on domestic policy and on foreign policy, there's a whole long laundry list of the great challenges that we're facing, and the urgent need for a huge shift in the direction of our country. But fundamentally, the things that I am sincerely most concerned about is the assault and attack on our freedoms. Our God-given rights and freedoms enshrined in the Constitution and Bill of Rights. If we no longer have free speech in America, which is under threat and attack today, if we no longer have freedom of expression, freedom of religion, our right to privacy and civil liberties, we won't be able to have discussions about how we solve these great challenges that are before us. We will lose more and more of our liberty. I'm deeply concerned, to the point where if these people, the Biden-Harris administration and their cronies across the federal government, if they're allowed to stay in power, I'm certain that we will get to a point before too long where we will lose so much of our freedom that it'll be virtually impossible to get it back, and our country will become unrecognizable.
Tulsi, how did we get to this point? I scratch my head and I look back and I say, I've never seen anything like this in my life. How did we get to this point?
Ultimately, we can point to politicians who abuse their power. We can point to partisan politics. where people are putting their own partisan interest or their own self-interest ahead of the interest of the country, this insatiable drive and hunger for power, blinding them to what should be very clear, which is to do what is right for the American people above all else. But ultimately, while we have to correctly diagnose the problem in order to offer a solution, the solution is in our hands. I completely understand why so many Americans are disillusioned with our political process. They don't vote because they feel like their vote and voice won't be heard. They feel like our government is so disconnected from the reality of our everyday lives, which is true. It is. But we have to take action. And this is the call to action at the end of my book. After identifying and diagnosing these problems, we got to look ourselves in the mirror and remember that our founders envisioned a form of governance in this constitutional republic where the power is in the hands of the people. And so if we don't like what's happening in our country today, if we are unhappy with these self-interested and self-serving politicians, it's going to be up to us to make that change, recognizing that our government only exists with our consent. We have a huge election coming up, and our casting our votes, making sure that our voices are heard, supporting candidates who are committed to upholding the Constitution and sending people home who are actively undermining our Constitution today. This is how we actually start to get our country back on track. This is that first step.
I agree with all of that, Tulsi, but I think you know what the problem is? People that are out there today, trying to make a living, supporting their family, working from paycheck to paycheck,
Yes.
they're not as aware as you are, or even myself, as really what's going on. They get their news from the mainstream media, which I believe, as you know, is not even news anymore. It's more about
No,
opinions. It's more about covering for the party in power.
that's
And so
right.
they don't know what's really going on. And that's really scary. To me, the two most dangerous things that happen in government are, number one, what's happening today when the party in power starts to weaponize agencies, the federal government and law enforcement to go after their political enemies. We're seeing that
Yes.
happening, so often
In
now
broad daylight.
in broad daylight, in front of everybody. They don't even care about it anymore. And then
No.
secondly, okay, when the media starts to cover for them, we don't get the true news. That's bordering on communism. That's
Yeah, it
propaganda.
is. It is. And this is how unfortunately our government is, and this cabal of those who hold the levers of power. You've just mentioned a few of them who collaborate with those who are abusing their power in our government. They are making it so that our country resembles more of a banana republic than a true democratic republic. It's something that you're right. Most Americans are really just trying to get by, are trying to raise their kids, trying to provide a good life and a good home and a safe place for their families and their loved ones. They don't have the time to go and listen to all the podcasts or go out and do the research to figure out which news media outlet is lying to them and what the bias is. Uh, the thing that gives me some hope, Michael, about our ability to use this election to start to turn things around is that people don't have to watch the news anymore to learn about how their school is trying to allow boys to compete against girls in girls' sports. They don't have to turn on the news anymore to learn about the fact that their towns and cities and communities are being flooded with illegal immigrants. And as we're seeing in New York City and many other places, the mayors are saying, well, if we are mandated to provide food and housing for illegal immigrants, we're going to have to cut things like sanitation costs. We're going to have to cut things like police and public safety, cutting the basic bare necessities that the government is supposed to provide for its community because of these open border policies that the Biden-Harris administration is pushing. There are other examples of this, but it's becoming harder and harder for people who don't pay attention to politics at all, who don't watch cable news at all, to deny the fact that our country is headed very rapidly in the wrong direction. It doesn't matter how many times President Biden says Bidenomics is working. People are getting paychecks every other week are recognizing, hey, things are getting more and more expensive, but my paycheck is not going up to match the level of inflation that we've seen for so long now through the majority of the Biden-Harris administration. So my hope is that, and this is what I'm dedicating my time to, this is what I'm trying to do with my book and on every platform available, is to reach as many people as possible, to connect the dots between those symptoms that they are experiencing in their everyday lives, those consequences of these policies, with the reason why these things are happening and how we can actually bring about change to fix them.
Well, and speaking of your book, I just read a summary of it, and I just want to read one thing. And this is obviously for love of country. It says, for love of country is to prioritize the well-being and interests of the American people above any partisan politics or personal agendas. And, that is so significant. It's become so, us against them.
Yes.
And the interests of the American people are lost in that battle.
Yeah.
So many people have, I don't understand, Tulsi, I don't understand this hatred for Donald Trump. I just don't get it. I've never seen anything like this in my life. That's saying a lot because I was on the street for 20 years. But,
Exactly.
people talk to me. I said, listen, this is an election unlike any other. You have two records to compare. Okay, when you look at it's black and white. There is no comparison. How could you even say anything? It's not a personal issue with Trump. It's how he ran the country. That's what we should be
Yeah.
concerned about.
Well,
And
the
I don't get
the
it.
the thing that you're talking about is, I think a lot of the Democrat elite realize that when you actually contrast and compare the records of these two presidents, as you said, there really is no there's no gray space there. The contrast is very clear, and that's why they use these distraction and diversionary and deflection tactics to tell people, oh, look over here, Trump said something mean about somebody else. Or
Mhm.
look over here, this person made this accusation about Trump. Or, they use this fear mongering. They say, oh, Trump is going to destroy our democracy, because they're trying to get us to look away from the fact that they are destroying
Right.
our democracy. Well, Trump is going to do this and that. Well, they're trying to distract us away from the reality of how they are actively destroying and undermining our Constitution. Why is this the now common term, the Trump derangement syndrome, so prevalent amongst the Democrat elite? It's because they know they can't control him, and he poses a direct threat to their establishment and their power, because he's one of these guys who's not afraid to call them out. He's not afraid to challenge the norm and say, hey, that thing you guys have been doing for decades and that may have Republican and Democrat support, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. It's not working for the American people. He says the things that a lot of people within our political world are too afraid to say, even though they know it's true. And this is why he poses a threat. He's not going to be bullied by the military-industrial complex. He's not going to be bullied by any of these other special interests who people in Washington care more about pleasing than they do about pleasing and serving the interests of the American people. That's why they're so crazed about trying with all the levers of power at their fingertips to destroy Donald Trump and make it virtually impossible for the American people to even have that choice in a democratic society of who they can vote for and want to vote for as president.
So true. And I hope people are aware that what they're doing to Donald Trump, it's not really about Trump. It's
It's not.
about what they're taking away from the American people, the right of choice.
You're
They
right.
really want to destroy this man. And I've never seen, such a vendetta against anyone in my lifetime. And Tulsi, I'll tell you this, I try not to be a hateful person. I am a person of faith, but I have such horrible feelings for Joe Biden because he's not only destroying our country, but he's causing chaos throughout the world. I've been in the United Kingdom for the past 2 weeks. The way people are talking about America now, it's an embarrassment. I mean, everybody I speak to, Michael, what's going on in your country? It's embarrassing. What is going on? I think a lot of, as America goes, the rest of the world goes, certainly here in the United Kingdom. And it's just, people have to recognize this. They have to. This is
Yeah.
such destruction going on.
It's I try to refocus the conversation here at home away from the superficial distractions back to the fundamentals. There's a whole generation of young people who didn't learn about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the origins and the founding of our country as they grew up through going through K through 12 public schools. They haven't learned in a really meaningful way, what does it mean to be an American? What kind of responsibility comes with being a citizen of this country? Why was it so important to our founding fathers to ensure that the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights has to do with freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion? Because of that, we're in a place now where there's a lot of people in our country who don't know what it means to be an American anymore.
Mm.
And they don't value these freedoms that so many, my brothers and sisters in uniform over generations, have sacrificed their lives to support and defend. And they don't understand, and you made mention of this, that what's happening right now is this is not about Donald Trump. And it's not really even about Joe Biden at all. He's the guy who happens to be there. And yes, he is the president of the United States and he wants to continue in that job. But when you look at the levers of power, they are so much bigger than Joe Biden. And their goal is to take away our freedom, to consolidate their power. The short-sightedness of this is that as they openly talk about and advocate for and are trying to censor our speech, limit individuals' ability to express themselves, once the levers of power change, as they always do, shift from one direction to another, what's to stop, once this precedent has been set, what's to stop the other political opponents, once they get into power, from flipping the script and turning the tables and now censoring the very people who are censoring us today? It's inevitable. And this is the whole point. I was in a conversation last night with some folks in Washington, D.C. about foreign policy and free speech. The issue of free speech came up because very often, as you know, Michael, the excuse of national security to take away our free speech, to take away our liberty, is one of the most effective and most often used. We have to be absolute defenders of free speech, not only for those we agree with or when it's popular or convenient, but maybe even more so, and especially for those voices who we may vehemently disagree with, whose speech we may find to be offensive and abhorrent. We have to stand up for that free speech in both of those scenarios, because inevitably, whether it's tomorrow or next week or next year or in 10 years, if we don't do that collectively, it is our speech that will be censored and our voices that will be silenced.
Yeah, and I just hope people realize that. I really do. Tulsi, I have to ask you about one thing that's just obviously on the front end of everybody's mind. It's a big issue, coming in November, is what's happening at the borders.
Yes.
I have said since day one, it's definitely not for humanitarian reasons that, this administration is allowing this to happen and allow these migrants to come across the border. I always said the plot here is to try to bring all of these migrants in and turn every state blue, that somehow they will get them to register to vote. They never want to get out of power again. And in doing so, they're just trampling on all the rights of the American people, causing more trouble. But, I've said this, and please understand where I'm coming from. But, when I was on the street and doing my thing, I didn't pretend to be a protector of the people. I did what I did. But when you have the trust of people and they're trusting in you to act in their best benefit, and they elect you to that office for that purpose, and you totally disregard that, totally disregard that. You say one thing and then do the other, and do it in broad daylight. Like, you don't even care anymore that people are looking at you. You know what, Tulsi, it drives me crazy. People say, well, you know what? That's politics. People lie. I said, no, that's not politics. That's lying. It's lying, no matter whether you're a politician or anybody else. And they're lying to the detriment of you and the American people. And I just don't understand it. And, you're around these people a heck of a lot more than I am. How do they live with themselves? Really?
I have a couple of comments to make on this. First, look, it's understandable to say, oh, politicians, yeah, of course they're lying because that's what politicians do. My gosh, how about we demand more of our public servants? They should be public servants, not politicians. And we're the ones who allow them to get these jobs, and we're the ones who can fire them. So we must demand more. Don't just accept the fact that all politicians are corrupt or all politicians are liars or whatever the broad judgment may be. These feelings, I get why they're there and why they're justified, but these people don't self-appoint themselves. We do have these things that are called elections. And yes, we constantly have to strive to make sure that they are better and more open and ensure their integrity so we can trust the outcome of these elections. But regardless, this is the system that we have. So we've got to raise the bar, because if we don't raise the bar, then we're going to continue to see this diminishing down to the lowest common denominator, with people getting away with whatever it is they want to do. But this is where it's like, you asked, how do they live with themselves? How do they sleep at night? This is really the dangerous thing is, as you said, when you were out in the street, you were who you were, you presented yourself as you were. There was no fake facade of pretension or pretending to represent yourself as something other than you are. I get asked, a comment I get very often when I'm out at different events and meeting people, they're like, oh my gosh, Tulsi, I've only ever seen you on TV, but you're so normal. Like, this is incredible. And I always laugh. It's like, man, thank you, I think. But it really sucks that seems to stand out as an exception, because you have so many politicians who do put on that face and that facade and pretend to be something when in reality they're another. The dangerous underpinning of this is that there are people in some of the highest positions of power in our country who are doing all these things we're talking about. They support open borders. They are undermining the rule of law. They are defunding the police. They are stoking the fires of racism and divisiveness. They are, 32 plus states in this country tried to remove Donald Trump from the ballot unilaterally, trying to take away our right to choose who it is that we want to vote for, completely destroying our democracy, censoring free speech for people that they don't agree with. All of these things are happening. And the dangerous thing is that those who are behind it, they sleep at night because they feel justified, as though they are the leaders of a righteous movement to save freedom and defend democracy. And in their minds, the only way they do that is by destroying Donald Trump. The only way they do that is by consolidating their power into their hands, because they and they alone are the ones who know what's best for us little peons, we the American people. And they know what's better for us than we do for ourselves. So they're taking it upon themselves to try to save us from ourselves. They are trying to take away our freedom, because with freedom, we may make what they view as the wrong choice. Take this all the way back. I would rather have the freedom to make my own decisions, to think for myself, to act independently. And yes, sometimes to make a wrong choice where I have to live with the consequences of that decision. That's what our founders envisioned for us as individual Americans, to exercise those individual liberties and to live with the outcome and the consequences of them, and that our government should be incredibly limited only to its basic essential functions, decentralizing power down to the lowest level and protecting our freedom. That's unfortunately not what we have today. We have the exact opposite.
Yeah, it's so true. And Tulsi, do you really think that they believe that they're doing the right thing?
Yes.
When the
I know these
Democrats,
people.
really,
Yes. Yes.
when they vote as a bloc like that, just to support, their party, don't any of them must say, and I know this is wrong, but I have to do it anyway because it's part of, I can't believe that they actually believe that they're defenders of democracy and freedom when they're actually trying to take it away from us.
Most of them on this issue of democracy in particular, they really do believe in their heart of hearts that they are the democracy defenders of freedom. And they don't see the hypocrisy in their actions and how they are actually destroying our democracy and undermining our freedom. On other issues, again, this goes back to their being consumed by their hatred of Donald Trump that allows them to believe this. You can look at some other issues. Yeah, on the issue of Ukraine, for example, this proxy war against Russia and using hundreds of billions of American taxpayer dollars to continue to fund this war. I know that there are some of my former Democrat colleagues who don't agree with it, and they know that this is not what's right for the American people or our national security, or even for the people of Ukraine, but they have been bullied into silence. They've been bullied into silence. The Democrat Party has become the anti-free speech party and has now become the party of total conformity and compliance, or else face the consequences. But again, when we go and look past these different issues, which are very important, I keep reminding people we've got to focus on the basics of freedom and democracy in this country, because once we lose that, nothing else matters. Nothing else will count. And on those issues, very dangerously, these people believe that they are on the quote unquote right side of history. And that's a dangerous thing. When you look at dictatorships and autocracies and banana republics and in other parts of the world or throughout history, these dictators really believe that they are saving their country, or they are saving their people, or that they are the ones who they and they alone can actually provide the right path forward. And it leads to some very evil and harmful actions coming from them as a result.
Well, and you said the word evil. What is the mentality? And I don't know if you can even answer this. What is the mentality behind, all of this issue of putting sexual material in public schools in front of children at the age of 6, 7, 8 years old? How do they justify that? How could they get behind such a cause? I mean, these people have families, they have children. I can't believe that they would advocate that for their own kids, and yet they remain silent when it's happening to everybody else. The same thing with transsexual women in sports. I
Yes.
say to myself, where are all the women's groups hollering and screaming now? Why are they not supporting Riley Gaines and people like this? And I read, it's disgusting to me when I read that a woman athlete is uncomfortable because a transsexual is changing his clothes in her bathroom. She says something about it and she's in trouble for it. I mean, is this such a drop in morality now that's affecting all of government, it seems, or a good part of government, at least half of it? Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know I don't even know how to answer that. It's so, I can't process it.
Well, I mean, at a fundamental level, and I go into this in great detail in my book and dedicate a whole chapter to how increasingly over time, the Democrat elite are intent on trying to erase God from every facet of our public life, and are actively going after and criticizing and ridiculing and shaming people of faith and spirituality, especially Christians now. And so, of course, there are very real consequences to that. When you start unraveling the spiritual foundation of a nation, you reject the objective truth, for example, of the biological differences between boys and girls. When you do that, and that's just one example, but when you do that, you remove the guardrails, the moral guardrails of a civilized society. It's what leads to them not recognizing the danger and the insanity of, boy going and with all of his parts going and showering in a female locker room. It's what allows them to say with a straight face that pedophiles should now be called minor attracted people, and that we can't allow for there to be a stigma for someone who is attracted sexually to children. The depravity is beyond compare. And on this, I have friends who are parents of little girls who are or used to be very prominent Democrats in this country. And, I wonder the same thing. I know in their heart of hearts, they cannot believe that this is right. And maybe what it will take is their daughter being confronted with someone who's exposing himself in their team locker room at high school or in college or in middle school, for them to wake up to this. But until that point, they are cowering in fear. And that's the case for, I think, a lot of these Democrats in powerful positions. They are so terrified of being called a transphobe, of being called all of these names, a sexist and a misogynist and a racist, all these names. I've been called most of those names simply for speaking the truth. And they're more afraid of having their so-called reputation being tarnished by these woke crazed activists who are the very, very, very small minority, that they're not willing to stand up for the truth. They're not even willing to stand up for girls and women and fairness. It does boggle the mind. But when we look at those who are motivated by fear, they don't have strength, because strength comes from love. When we look at people who reject objective truth, really what they are rejecting is God, because God is the one who has created us. Objective truth is rooted in right and wrong. This is true, this is false. Once they reject that, they are in essence appointing themselves as God, because they're the ones who are saying they will tell us what is true and false. They will tell us what is right and what is wrong, what is acceptable and unacceptable, what is information versus disinformation. And this, again, this speaks to a very dangerous and sick mindset, that when you couple that with having access to some of the greatest levers of power that exist not only in this country but in the world, we face a very dangerous present and future that I never imagined we would face in my lifetime in this country.
Well, Tulsi, I got to say, you just said something. This is a small minority of people. Why
Yes.
is it that so many people in the Democratic Progressive Party cater these? Why are they so afraid of them when the majority of people don't ascribe to their lifestyle, their thinking, their moral, input? Why does it seem that, from the president on down, why are they so concerned about such a monarch? Is it because like empty barrels make the most noise and they're just afraid of them, even though they're such a minority? Why is it
Yes.
that?
They're afraid, and they claim to be the party of inclusivity, the party of tolerance, the party of compassion. But unfortunately, they have relegated all of those feelings and those values towards this very small, radical, extremist group of woke activists. They have no care and compassion for women and girls, as they are trying to erase the word woman from the English language. They don't care about tolerating the views of people who may disagree with their own. They don't care about being inclusive of those who have the audacity to call out and speak the truth, as a child would, and just say, hey guys, the emperor has no clothes on. Why can't everybody see what is so obvious to the rest of us? And again, this just it doesn't make sense. And your problem, Michael, is you are trying to make sense of this all. When it is just it really is insane thinking that is rooted in this insatiable hunger for power. And so they are waking up every day not with this positive energy rooted in love and care for our country and for the American people, but how do we get after the problems that we are facing? How do we find real solutions? They're getting up every day afraid, ultimately, that a free people living in a free society, with access to all the information at our fingertips, free to think for ourselves and make up our own minds, we pose the greatest threat to their power. And they're afraid of us, which is why they're doing everything that they're doing.
Well, yeah, it's sad to hear that, but I have to tell you this, Tulsi. I am a very optimistic person, to a fault. As a matter of fact, whenever something comes up and I tell my wife, don't worry about it, sometimes she says, well, don't say that. We have to worry. I'm always
Yeah.
optimistic. But I can tell you that I've had a very pessimistic view of what's going down in our country. And I don't know if it can be reversed. When I listen to you, it encourages me. And when I know what
Good.
you've covered in your book, it's encouraging. And I just pray that, you can continue and people like yourself can get the message out. But, you're in this whole Washington, circle, I would say. So, people. Do you share, are you really optimistic about, the future of our country? What is your feeling on it?
I am generally an optimistic person like you. And I'm optimistic not because of the people in Washington. I'm optimistic because of our fellow Americans. I know that there are so many great patriotic Americans across party lines who really do cherish peace and freedom and who really do love our country. And whether they're up to speed on all the details of the news and the policies and what's going on, at a basic kind of gut level, they recognize that things are going terribly wrong for our country. And so that is such an important thing because that means there is hope. No, that the damage is not irreparable. But this is a critical, for me, this is the most, for all of us, it's the most critical election of our life, of our lives because of what is on the line when it comes to our fundamental and foundational principles. And so it's going to take people like me and people like you and every single American to recognize that we each have our own skills and abilities, but each of us has the ability to connect with and influence other people. We have to be willing to reach out to those who don't pay attention to politics. Listen, build those conversations, find those areas of common ground, and recognize that if you got a Democrat and a Republican who's sitting there, that conversation could be a beautiful one when they come together around a shared love of country and appreciation for freedom. You can have the dialogue about how we approach solutions to these different things, but now's a time when we have to stand together and defend freedom. We have to share this message with those who aren't quite paying as much attention as we are and relight that fire that exists within every single one of us as Americans about owning our own responsibility to build the kind of country and government and future that we want to live in for ourselves and that we want to leave behind for those who are coming after us.
Yeah, and as you travel the country and speak to people, are you seeing that there is maybe an awareness that people are starting to realize, hey, things are not
Yes,
going well. We have to
yes,
reverse this.
yes, there is. There
I,
is.
are you getting the feeling that maybe some of those people that don't want to say it publicly for fear of being harassed or whatever, they may just go into the voting booth silently and push the right lever this time for Donald Trump?
I think there's a huge silent majority out there. I was just at an event in New Hampshire and in Boston over the weekend. And in both of those places, I met people who came up to me and said, "Thank you for saying what you are saying because I'm too afraid to say it." And this came, and there people came up and said, "I love what you said in your speech," making many of the same points that we're making in this conversation. But they said, "I was too afraid to clap while you were speaking
Wow.
because of the people around me." This is the state of fear that we live in. And so, yes, I feel confident that there will be a large number of people who may stay quiet and go and quietly cast their votes against Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But I'm really encouraging people to use your voice. If you're concerned about losing your freedom of speech, defend that freedom by exercising it. Yeah, of course, you're going to get a couple of knocks. You might get a couple of little, bruises, not physical bruises, but you might get called a couple of names, or you might have some friends call you things or say, "Hey, you're crazy," or whatever. But if we really truly value freedom, we got to be willing to stand up with courage and exercise that freedom because it's the only way we're going to send that message to those in power that we're not going to allow them to bully us and fearmonger us into submission. And so what form or shape that takes, that's up to you. But every one of us as Americans should stand proudly, exercise our free speech, express our love for our country, and show our willingness in our own small ways to actually defend that.
Well, that's good to hear, and I'm glad you're seeing that in people. And one last thing I want to cover. A couple of weeks ago, Speaker Johnson was out in Newport Beach at a fundraiser, and I attended. And I have a lot of admiration for him. I think he's a good man. He's a God-fearing man, and he's doing a good job. He's got a lot to, he has a razor-thin majority there, but
Tough
he's doing a
job.
good job. But, we had a Q&A, and I asked him, because he told me all the positive things that the Republican Party are doing, that I get very frustrated with them at times because they get to a certain point and then they stop. They
Yeah.
never really follow through like the Democrats do. And I said to him, Speaker Johnson, I said, listen, what are we doing this time? And I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I said, but I don't believe the last election was fair across the board. I don't know if it, tilted the election that much that Donald Trump would have won if there wasn't things going on. But I don't like the way it was handled. I think some things were done fraudulently. What are we going to do to ensure that this doesn't happen this time around? Because I think if that election is close, I don't trust the Democrats, Tulsi. They'll figure out a way to pull it out. What are we going to do? What is the Republican Party doing to ensure that we have a free election? If we don't have that, we have nothing anymore.
I'm glad you asked him the question, and I hope he gave you a good response. I am not on the inner circles of the Republican National Party or at the levels that Speaker Johnson is talking about, but even I'm aware that they're already hiring lawyers across the country, preemptively preparing for what will inevitably be an election that's filled with challenges, whether it's close or not. I know that there are volunteers. People are signing up to volunteer to go and be poll watchers, especially in those key swing states that will likely be the deciding factor in this election. And really, it's about ensuring that we demand transparency. Elections are not federally run. Elections are run by the state and local jurisdictions. And that means your local jurisdiction, there are local elections officials that we need to hold to account and to demand transparency. Have volunteers there watching every single step of the process. I believe firmly, and I introduced legislation when I was in Congress, that we should have paper ballots. We should have paper ballots to ensure that there's not even the possibility of a question of a doubt of whether or not an electronic machine has been hacked. As we know, many electronic machines are hackable very easily in some cases. There are a number of reforms that can be made from a policy perspective, but from where we sit today with less than 6 months before the general election November 5th, it's really going to come down to that transparency, that demand for transparency and accountability, and also making sure that those who are skeptical about whether or not their vote will be counted still go out and actually vote. Use all of the options available in your community to not only go and cast your vote, but get as many other people as possible out to vote. There may be some issues with absentee or vote by mail. It's on the table. I guarantee you Biden's going to be maximizing this. We need to make sure that we maximize that tool as well. You've got ballot drop boxes. You've got all of these different rules and different options that exist within our communities. And this was a problem that happened in that last 2020 election. There are those who are saying only go and vote on election day, only go and vote on election day. Well, life happens sometimes. People who plan to vote on election day, sometimes they're just not able to for whatever reason. And I compare that approach of those who say only go and vote on election day on the Republican side versus on the Democrat side. They're saying, hey, we will use and leverage and maximize every possible option available to turn out the highest number of votes for our quote unquote team. That's like going into battle with one side saying, all I'm going to bring is a shotgun, and the other side is bringing artillery and machine guns and handguns and sniper rifles and every piece of weaponry that they have in their arsenal. You really think you're going to be able to go and fight a fair battle in that situation? No. So we can't fix what's broken unless we get into a position of power and decision making where we can do that. Use all of the options available to legally cast as many votes, turn out as many votes as possible, and demand that transparency and accountability.
Well, I can't agree more, Tulsi. I know you have a voice and people listen to you in that arena. So just keep saying it because I don't want the Democrats to pull the wool over our eyes again in this election.
They will
Let
try
me ask you
everything. I
this.
don't doubt it.
No, let me ask you this. You've been around Donald Trump, and I met Donald once, long time ago. He had the same lawyer. I met him for a few minutes. I know Paul Manafort and people that know him. They all have nice things to say about him. He's a nice guy to be around. He really cares about the American people. I hear that consistently from people that are around him. What's happening to him now? I know the legal system. Unfortunately, I've been through it, quite a bit in my former life. I understand the racketeering statute. I really looked into these cases. I have never seen, and this is saying a lot for me. I've seen a lot, on street and legal battles and all that. I've never seen such a travesty of justice. What's
Yeah.
going on in this first case in this courtroom, what's going on across the board. It's absolutely horrible. What are your thoughts? You think he's going to come out of this? You think he's going to be our next president? I mean, what do you really feel about it?
It remains to be seen. I think anybody who tells you they know exactly how all this is going to turn out would be lying to you.
Mhm.
And it's merely because of the fact that what we're already seeing, they're waging lawfare and weaponizing the Department of Justice and law enforcement and doing their damnedest to try to throw Donald Trump in jail, believing that that may be the only way that the American people may not see him as a viable option to vote for, to serve again as president and commander in chief. Um, we have to remain vigilant and focused and not allow any kind of complacency to occur. Continue to speak the truth and expose them for what they're doing. I think that everyday Americans who aren't involved with politics are seeing how crazy this is. It'd be one thing if they were saying, okay, well, here's a supreme criminal offense that was committed and here's the evidence and all of this. But when you look across the board, I lose track of how many felonies they've charged him with at this point. And it's just insane. This New York case is a good example of how they're taking this guy who's a known liar and using him as their principal witness to try to charge Trump with like 30 plus felony counts around a case that the federal government rejected
Yes.
to pursue. So, I honestly don't know how things are going to turn out, Michael. Again, we have to stay focused because all of what we've already seen will only continue in some other way, shape, or form. There will continue to be assaults. There will continue to be smears. There will continue to be attacks. They will continue to weaponize the institutions of our government to undermine our democracy. It's up to us to take a stand against it and stay focused on what's really at stake here, which is nothing short of our freedom and our democracy and our future to be able to live in this country that we love.
Well, you're right there. And I just want to tell you this, I am very familiar with the racketeering statute. I've had 3 racketeering indictments in my past life. And I will tell you this, Tulsi, and you could take this to the bank. The evidence that's been presented so far by Congress with respect to Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and his brother, there is enough evidence there to absolutely have a RICO indictment. I'm not saying he's guilty. Everybody deserves their day in court and they deserve their day to defend themselves. But there is enough evidence to bring an indictment against that family right now. I know it.
Mm.
I've seen it all. I've gone through it, and I'm very familiar with the statute. So to understand, people need to understand how they are weaponizing the government to go after their enemies, and it's
And
absolutely
protect
partisan
their own.
politics. Protect their own. And we're seeing it more and more and more. And I just hope people are aware of it. And, it's very encouraging speaking to you and watching you. I've been watching on Fox News and everything for a long time and hearing you and realizing that you're a voice there. And it's just so encouraging, Tulsi. We need more
Thank
people
you.
like you. I mean that. I'm going to be encouraging you. You cover a lot of issues in the book that people need to be aware of. You talk about it, how to solve some of these issues. And I, for one, would strongly endorse you as vice president, and maybe our president someday. I mean it. I think we need your
Thank you.
voice there. So
Thank you.
thank you so much. It's a
Great to
pleasure
talk to you,
speaking to
Michael.
you. Yeah, I really mean that. And hopefully, like I said, we'll see you, rise in the ranks because that's where we need you.
I look forward to being able to serve our country in some fashion where I can help lead this change this transformational change that we so desperately need. Thank you so much. It's great to talk to you. Look forward to meeting you in person one of
Okay.
these days.
We'll do that one day. Thank you so
Safe
much.
travels, Michael.
Okay.
Aloha.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, my friends, well, there you have it. You know, just like I said, very intelligent woman, has a great perspective on major issues that are happening today that we really need to address. And I think she does a great job of expressing herself. I'm in agreement with just about everything that she said in this interview for sure. And like I said, she's going to be I think a force to be reckoned with. And hopefully we'll hear a lot more of her. And if she is the VP pick, hey, that would be great in my mind. But if not, I'm sure she is a real patriot, and she's going to be doing her part, to really solidify our democracy here in this constitutional republic that we're in. So Tulsi Gabbard, keep her in mind. Tulsi, thank you very much for coming on. And people, that's it. You know, I'm going to be, from now until the election, people, I'm telling you, I have a voice, I have a platform. I think that we are in real trouble. I don't think it, I know it. And we cannot, under any circumstances, have another 4 years of Joe Biden and this administration. And people, let me tell you this. If you think Joe Biden has been reckless in these past 3.5 years, imagine, just imagine, when he doesn't have to worry about re-election, whether it's him or all his unelected minions around him that are telling him what to do, all of these progressives that are shoving everything down his throat, and he gladly puts it out there for everybody else. Forget it. If he doesn't have to worry about re-election, we are doomed. I'm telling you, doomed. That border will be open like a sieve. We will have more illegal aliens coming into this country than you'll be able to count. That's for sure. We'll have crime in the streets. We'll have everything. We'll have maximum inflation. Our gas prices will go through the roof. We won't be able to have gas cars much longer. And he said all of this. I'm not, unlike the Democrats that predict what Trump is going to do based upon nothing. Okay, he has 4 years that he showed us what he will do. But they keep making up lies about him being a dictator and all of that. No, what we have for Joe Biden is what he's done and what he continues to do and what he says he's going to do. So we can't stand another 4 years of this guy. So we got to vote him out. That's it. We got to vote him out. I'm going to keep speaking about it. I'm going to be harping on it. I'm going to do everything I possibly can, because the only threat to our constitutional republic and our democracy is Joe Biden and that Democratic Progressive Party. That's the threat. It's not Donald Trump. It's not the conservatives. It's the Progressive Party, Joe Biden in the lead. So that's it for today. I'm not going to pontificate anymore. How do I always leave you? Same way. Be safe. Please do that. Here in California now, we have all these illegal migrants, immigrants, crossing over San Diego, going right into our neighborhoods. We don't even know who they are. It's happening now because they're coming through that part now. Who knows why? I don't know why. They're coming through everything because there's no border security. That's it. So please be safe. Ladies in Orange County and everywhere else, be safe. Be healthy. Of course, I always preach that. I live in a healthy family. And as always, people, God bless you, all your families, and I mean that from the heart. And yes, I'll see you next time. Take care.